Feral Audio.
This podcast is called Obsessed. Joseph Scrimshaw and his guest get some secrets off their chest. You should listen. It's the best.
Hello and welcome to Obsessed with me, Joseph Scrimshaw. I am sitting in the fancy Feral Audio recording studios with a comedian, an improviser, a podcaster, an actor, and I would say maybe even a man about town, Droege.
Hi, I'm happy to be a man about town.
I was hoping that would be the case.
That's a really great title.
Yeah,
you know, it's a heavy crown to wear, but I'll put it on.
I honestly wanted for a long time for someone to call me a man about town, and then in a review somebody just did, and I was like, my secret desire.
Is that like an ombudsman? Do you know what that is? When people
no.
go like an ombudsman. I think that's kind of what that is. I could be totally wrong. I don't have my brain with me, but I don't know. I think that's kind of what that is. Like I don't know.
Yeah, I think it's just that you're sort of social. I heard it when I was very young on the old Shadow radio show, because they described the Shadow's alter ego, Lamont Cranston, as a man about town.
A man about town.
And it just sounded very fancy and important.
Yes.
And I thought, that means you've made it if you're a man about town.
Or maybe you're deeply lonely.
You're just a man wandering the town
Wandering
alone.
around with no home or base or anything. I don't know.
A man about a town with all of his possessions with him in a little bag. Man about town.
In a bindle.
Yeah, I meant it in a positive way for you.
Oh, well,
Drew.
thank you. Thank you.
So thank you so much for doing this. Can you tell people...
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. Can you tell people a little bit about who you are, what you do, all that kind of stuff?
Sure. Well, I also have a podcast on Feral, which you have been on.
Yeah.
And you were wonderful on. It's called Minor Revelations. So I do that. And yes, I do a lot of shows in LA, and I was recently doing my solo show in New York, so I've been kind of going back and forth between New York and LA, doing a lot of live theater, and I do comedy, and I'm an actor, and I'm so bored with myself. I don't know.
I understand.
But yeah.
What was your show in New York? I remember seeing a million Twitter raves about it.
I was doing a play that I wrote called Bright Colors and Bold Patterns, which is I was playing a character who is like sort of on the verge of a small breakdown the night before a wedding in Palm Springs. So I was doing that. I've done it off and on for a couple years.
Okay.
And so I just did a run in New York, and it was a lot of fun. And I'm doing a play right now in LA called Die Mommy Die, which is a Charles Busch play. Do you know Charles Busch? Are you familiar with this? Yeah, he's incredible. He's this legend who has written plays for a long time, where he always basically wrote himself into these plays where he plays the lead actress, and it's always like some woman in peril who's some fabulous actress or singer or model or whatever.
Yeah.
Who and he's obsessed with these films of the 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, these genre films.
Yeah.
And so he writes these plays that I guess are parodies, but they're really way more homage, because he loves that period so much. So I'm doing that. I'm doing one of his plays right now called Die Mommy Die, which was a film that he starred in the lead role in, I think, 2003.
Wow. With
Jason Priestley and Natasha Lyonne and Frances Conroy, Philip Baker Hall. Anyway, they were all in the film. So we're doing it at the Celebration Theater right now.
Awesome.
So that's what I'm currently doing.
Cool.
Yeah.
It's delightful for me to hear about someone doing theater stuff, because I started out doing theater stuff, and I do miss it. So it's fun for me to talk to somebody like you who is ensconced in LA and doing podcasts and all the LA stuff, but also know the world of theater.
I'm a big believer in it, and I'm very quick to defend LA theater, because there's a lot of crap in LA theater, but there's also a lot of really great stuff happening as well. And it's always kind of sort of been my dream, to have in LA to be able to work in film and TV and do stuff, and then be able to do theater on the side, because it is so much more. I mean, the role that I'm getting to play in this play is so incredible that, unless you're a huge star, you don't get to do that in film and TV. And it's really great when you get to do anything in film and TV, but in theater you get a really great experience, and just the people you meet, and just the ensemble of that, and getting together and doing a 2-hour play together every night is unlike when you're just kind of popping in and out and doing a bit on something, and you don't really have that. You don't usually get that kind of camaraderie. So
yeah, that's such a
I'm
weird...
a big believer in doing both if and when I can. it's hard because, to negotiate that. And there are a lot of people in LA that only do theater, that don't do as much, film and TV. And so there's kind of a battle between the two worlds sometimes over like priorities.
Are you considered like a mythical being, like the Griffin that somehow combines theater and comedy in LA?
I consider myself man about town, mythical being, God. What else? No, but it's odd because I have a lot of friends that like haven't done theater in a long time, that maybe have before or whatever. But and I get why, because it's a lot of time and it's a lot of energy. But you have to do some stuff for money, and then you do other things for the experience of
of feeling alive.
Yeah.
I think that's great background so people understand a little bit more where you're coming from with your obsession.
Yes.
And your obsession is John Waters.
Yes, so much. And I sort of like Charles Busch, because I've known about Charles Busch since I was in high school. I've been obsessed with John Waters since I was, John Waters was earlier. I think I discovered, should I just jump right into it?
Yeah, exactly that. When did you first find John Waters?
Sadly, and nothing wrong with this film, but it's just the most obvious of his films, and it's the most like basic bitch entry into John Waters. But when I was 11, Hairspray came out.
Okay,
and that's obviously his most famous film. And it's a great movie, and it deserves all the credit that it got, and it was so subversive for him to make a PG-rated movie, because he was just, known as the Pope of Trash and, the King of Filth and whatever other people had called him. So, but yeah, that was the first John Waters movie that I saw. And there was just something about it that immediately fit. I mean, from the second that I saw the opening credits, and, I was like, this person understands me. This is exactly what I want to live inside of forever. And there was just something in the characters. There's so many characters in all of his movies that I just respond to. And that way, I mean, I remember first time I saw Hairspray, I didn't know much about, like, 'cause it's, the whole thing. There's and all of his movies are in Baltimore. But this is about the Corny Collins show, and it's about the, it's weekly dance program, and the racial tensions that were happening, because it's set in 1963. And so, I knew I had studied that, and I knew I was like, but I didn't think you could ever make any of that funny. And I remember thinking it was hilarious. And I remember like walking around screaming, like, like segregation never, integration now, from that movie, and not really understanding that was actually a thing. I didn't
thought
really
like John Waters made that slogan up? Or?
I don't know. I mean, I don't think I connected like the reality of what he was actually doing at the time with like the story of that movie. But that movie actually made all of basically like Martin Luther King funny, and it's such a positive message, and it was like so. Again, growing up in North Carolina in a small town. I grew up in this lovely family, but it was very, conservative, very white, very Presbyterian, just WASP, And there was something immediately when I saw Hairspray that I was like, oh, I want to hate white people as much as this movie does,
Yeah.
And that's the thing that like you can argue. I mean, John Waters' movies always have this. He's known for the, people, if they know this stuff, they're always like, oh, they're trash. And they love to like celebrate like the filthiest things. And like, oh my God, there's a movie where Divine eats dog shit. And there's a movie where, she's raped by a lobster and all these things, the sensational stuff. But, which, yes, all of that, and hooray for all of that. But also, like, there's such a humanist quality to his films, and always the good guys win.
Yeah,
and the bad guys
Hairspray.
Hairspray is the perfect example.
Are they all as sort of uplifting as
They
Hairspray?
are. If you look at them in the certain lens of like the worst people like suffer like horrible consequences at the end of his films, and he celebrates the freaks, he celebrates the outcasts, he celebrates people who are maligned by society. That's his whole MO, and so. They're never mean-spirited.
Yeah.
There's nothing in a John Waters movie that you can go, oh, that's too far for me. Where there's a lot of films out there that people compare to John Waters gets horribly dragged through so many terrible movies, and they go, that's like a John Waters movie, and it's like, absolutely not.
Right.
No movie is like a John Waters movie unless it's a John Waters movie.
Right. So you have to look past the shit to the heart.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And his movies absolutely have that. And, Divine and Mink Stole, especially, the two of them are like really great actors and like are really giving this like committed performance in all of his films. And you watch them again. And I think that's what sets them apart, is that they're not, first of all, they weren't trying to make anything campy or trashy. They were coming from a place of truth. And
it was just like the aesthetics that he legitimately liked, right?
Yes,
like he liked sort of bright colors and bold, shocking moments.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I got to work with Mink Stole a few years ago, and in a very important film called Eating Out 4.
Can you remind me who, I know who Divine is, but I don't remember who Mink Stole is,
Mink Stole,
visually or...
She was always, she's been in all of his films, maybe not his very, very earliest ones that you can't even find, but all of them from Mondo Trasho, which is his first like sort of recognized quote unquote real film, because he was making, shorts and all this kind of stuff. But his first feature length that you can find anywhere is Mondo Trasho. And from then up until now, like, she has been in all of his films.
Damn.
So in Hairspray, she plays Corny Collins' assistant. She's a blonde. She's very thin, really sharp features.
Okay.
She always said that she had no idea back in the day, and none of them knew the genius of what was happening. They were just doing things that made them laugh. But she said John always knew. She's like, John always knew what he was doing, and we just knew enough to just do what he told us to do.
Okay.
And so, they all like went to high school together, and like they grew up in Baltimore, and they were just making these movies together. They had no idea that they were going to be these cultural phenomenon that like people still watch and talk about. But the thing that if you watch like these old Andy Warhol movies, they're just terrible. Like they're just, like you can watch them and go, or for a certain point or for 5 or 10 minutes and just go, okay, this is kind of garbage, or it's, sensational or whatever. But like John Waters, there's such a clear point of view.
Okay.
In all of his films that he knew what he was doing, and he was sending up society.
Yeah. So obviously John Waters super well. When you first saw Hairspray, did you make that like an immediate mission when you were 11 to be like, I'm going to figure out who made this and figure out everything about them?
No, I kind of had this like journey through high school where I was like getting as much as I could, because this was, this would have been 90s when we didn't have internet, so I couldn't really find things. But I was, Crybaby came out,
right?
And Serial Mom. Serial Mom came out when I was in high school, and I remember Serial Mom was like my favorite, and it is to this day one of my top 10 of all time favorite movies.
Serial Mom?
Serial Mom.
Okay.
And I think that Serial Mom will be studied, if we're still here in 100 years, as a blistering indictment and a perfect like time capsule of the 90s, because it has so much of what was happening in our culture in the 90s in that film. With our obsession with celebrity, it was just after like Amy Fisher and Menendez brothers, OJ, all of that was happening in like 94 when Serial Mom was coming out, with our obsession with a housewife and like values that like the sweetest suburban mom who's actually killing people.
Yeah, it's sort of John Waters' vision coming into real life of this mashup of like true horror with the utterly trashy.
Completely. And Kathleen Turner gives a truly Oscar-worthy performance in the film. I mean, she really should have been nominated for all the awards that year. Because, again, she's not playing it for like winks and jokes and camps. She is so fully committed to being Beverly Sutphin. And there are these moments in it where you're like, she's giving the performance of her career. I mean, she's great in everything, but she's so incredibly magical in this movie. So I had seen those, and I was having friends over, and I would always make them watch these movies, and and I would be laughing harder than anyone all the time, and making my poor friends sit through Hairspray, Crybaby, and Serial Mom. And then I remember finding a catalog, some video catalog, and being able to get Multiple Maniacs, which is up until last year one of the hardest ones still to get. Last year, the Criterion Collection did a release of Multiple Maniacs. But I somehow got a VHS of Multiple Maniacs in Lincoln, North Carolina in the 90s that I ordered. So I had this copy of it, and I remember my mom getting it and just being like, "What is this?" Because it's this black and white, and it looks like gonzo porn from 1969. And my mom was just like, "What are you into? Like, this is so weird that this would be the thing that you would order." And I remember my mom being like, my mom knew who Divine, my mom, knows who Divine was, but she was just like, "You got some Divine movie in the mail?" And I was like, "Oh, I've got Multiple Maniacs."
And how old are you? Like 16?
I was probably
15,
16. I was probably 16 at the time, yeah. And so, but I really dug for that. And then it wasn't until freshman year in college when there was a Blockbuster or Hollywood Video that had Female Trouble and Pink Flamingos at the video store. And I was able, and in freshman year, I made friends of mine rent Female Trouble, and I had never seen it, but I had been reading all about it. At this point, I was finding articles about him and his movie, and I was like, so I made, sight unseen, made a whole group of friends watch Female Trouble, which is so great. I don't know. Have you seen any of these movies?
I've seen Hairspray. Like, I am a basic bitch too.
Oh, no. No. Well, Female Trouble came out after Pink Flamingos. And each one of his movies, like you see the progression in the quality of film that he's making, because like if you start with Mondo Trasho, which is like it's a silent film that he put a soundtrack underneath, so it's just Divine and Mink Stole and just a lot of crime they're committing all around Baltimore, and there's a lot of nudity and then Multiple Maniacs was after that, and it was his first talkie in like 1970. And it's incredible because the re-release in Criterion Collection was so great because there's so much dialogue that he's cleaned up that you can actually hear, because in the version that I had, it wasn't bootleg, but it was a really bad copy. You couldn't hear a lot of the dialogue in it. So like it was just a lot of screaming and a lot of like, but it was a thing about Divine.
Like that.
Divine played a character named Divine who had this thing called the Cavalcade of Perversions, and she traveled around to different cities. And people would go inside and see like a puke eater and like all these different things, and like, and like a reefer smoker, and like one of them was just like two men kissing, and these people would be like revolted by it, and then they would kill these people, and then they would take all their watches and their wallets, and they would travel to the next town.
This is Female Trouble?
This is Multiple Maniacs.
Multiple Maniacs. So this is the one you got in the mail at 16.
So that's the one I got in the mail. Then Pink Flamingos was after that, and that came out in 72, and that was his huge blowout. That's when he really got the attention, and that's the one where Divine, eats dog shit at the end. That's what most people know about, but that's the one where it's a contest for who's the filthiest person alive. And so Divine is in this contest between, that and Mink Stole and David Lockery are this couple, and they're named Connie and Raymond Marble, and they live across across Baltimore, and they're truly horrible people. And Divine is sort of the hero of that. Right. And so they go back and forth as to who's worse. And the movie culminates with Divine, and it's a single shot of a dog walking down the street, squatting, shitting, Divine scooping it up and eating it all in one take. And which he really did.
Yeah.
And that's his most famous of the underground films.
Okay.
Then after that is Female Trouble, which is far superior in my opinion, because the script is so sharp, and it's when they really nailed the dialogue. So I would suggest if you were trying to find like the first like underground John Waters, like pre Hairspray John Waters, the first one to watch would be Female Trouble, because it's vile and upsetting but in the best way, but it's so funny from the second it starts. And I have a group of friends that gets together every year in Palm Springs for New Year's, and we watch movies, and we just share throughout the year. We like find things that we think nobody has seen.
Okay.
But the one movie that we watch every single year is Female Trouble.
And is that to like recreate this adventure you had in college watching Female Trouble?
It's like, it makes me so happy that I have a group of friends now that all collectively love it. And you can watch it over and over and over again, and it never gets old.
Did the people appreciate it when you first watched it in college, or were you alone in your love?
On some level, they did, because they always bring it up. Because they're always like, 'cause it was freshman year, and these are still people that I'm still in touch with and still friends with, and they always bring up like, remember freshman year when you made us sit in your dorm room and watch Female Trouble? And they remember it all too well. So it's not like one of these dark things that they've blocked out, and they're like, so I'm very proud of that, because I also I went to Wake Forest, which is, if you're familiar with it, it's a very
I'm not.
conservative small school in North Carolina. So I was very proud.
Oh, wow. So you didn't like get out of this small town rural area as you went to college.
Well, Wake Forest is a really good school, and it was about 3 hours away from where I grew up.
Okay.
But it's definitely a small liberal arts school. It was not a big lab, but it was in Winston-Salem, which is a lot more.
Okay, so you still felt like you were like exploding out into the world when you went to college?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
When I was 18, I was like, I'm moving from Lincolnton to Winston-Salem, North Carolina. So no, I didn't really explode out into the world until after college when I moved to LA. But I was very happy to get to share John Waters movies with these people who were even more sheltered than I was in terms of what they had seen movie-wise. So so I've just always, and then after Female Trouble, there was Desperate Living, which is about it's all about like, women committing crime and and vile acts being done. And that one is where it's like almost like a fairy tale.
Okay.
For people who are criminals and they live in a place called Mortville. And it's almost like the Upside Down in Stranger Things. It's very similar to like this alternate world they have to go to, and and then there was Polyester, which was one of his biggest mainstream hits before Hairspray. And I've always said he's my number one. Like Carol Burnett and John Waters are my two. Like those are the people that have like influenced me more than anybody.
So have you ever met him, or would you want to meet him? Well,
I got to talk to him on the phone. I got to interview him. And I've had opportunities to meet him before, and I totally geek out. Like I'm just afraid. Because I've only heard wonderful stories about him, and people say he's like the coolest, greatest, nicest person in the world. I just don't really know what I would say to him because it's like so deep. And I think that's the thing where you're like, there's certain people you go, oh, it's so cool to meet you. I'd have questions for you. But I feel like I've read every one of his books because he's written several books.
Yeah.
I've read all of his interviews. I know everything I'd want to know. Like I feel like I know him.
Yeah.
And I have that. I'm not a big fan of a lot of people and things on that level, but I get it when people talk about being such nerds or fans of things because I'm like, I have that weird thing where I want him to know how much I get it.
Right.
Do you know what I mean?
So you want to just come to him and say, like, here are the 5 or 6 key phrases that unlock the truth of...
And I know that, like, it would never mean the same thing to him. You know what I mean? And so it would just be this weird thing, like,
I understand what you mean, though. When you read enough about somebody, you're like, hey, I get where you're coming from. But that's a weird thing to just walk up to an artist and go...
It's hard because you're just like, So anyway, I was writing for this local magazine in LA called Frontiers, and I usually did, like, editorial and comedy stuff, and... The editor was like, we have an interview with John Waters, and I know how much you love him.
Oh, nice.
Would you like to interview him for his upcoming holiday show? And I don't interview people, like, except for, like, on my podcast or whatever. But, like, I don't really know how to do that. And so I was like, yes, I have to. So I did get to talk to him on the phone, and he was incredible. But I was such a babbling dork. Like, I had to start with, you don't know how much I love you. I love you so much. You don't even know. You don't even know me. And he was like, oh, great. That's so nice. We'll have a good interview then. Great. And within 30 seconds, we were talking about his favorite porn, which was something about it was like ghost. It was like some sort of like Scandinavian ghost porn that he loved. And I was like, this is why he's so amazing, because he's so instantly familiar. Like, okay, he gets it. We're going to go into this really dark hole without,
Yeah.
But then the questions that I asked him, I kind of knew a lot of the answers.
Did you feel like he gave you boilerplate answers?
Well, what he did really brilliantly was that he has done so many interviews. He sort of steered the interview in a great way. Like he kind of knew, like, okay, I can just talk about this, and this is what I want to talk about here and there and here, I did remember I asked him what was like shocking now. I was like, what shocks you now?
Oh.
I was like, what are the kids doing now that is like, like you guys like, took Speed and made these like really edgy movies and and he was saying bitcoins. That's when he was like bitcoins. And so I thought that was really interesting. And because he's really, to this day, I mean, he's 70 years old and he's still punk rock. I mean, this is a man who 2 years ago hitchhiked across the country. Do you know about this?
I read his Wikipedia page this morning.
Okay.
Two of the big things that were there was the dog shit scene in the hitchhiking.
Yes. He just asked himself, what's the most punk thing to do now? Like, what can I do? in my late 60s at the time. And he decided to hitchhike from Baltimore to San Francisco. And he told his assistant, do not save me. No matter what.
That was
under
not in
no
there.
circumstances. And it's in his book, Car Sick. So he documented his whole time doing this. So yeah, he told his assistant, like, no matter what, do not help me. And he also started off saying, like, it's going to be widely documented if I start out on this and I don't make it through.
Yeah.
Because, like, if I call in, and he's like, I'm going to look like a failure, and I'm going to just be like, I failed at this. And, so he's like, and so he's so committed to being this badass that he is. He's like, I'm doing it. He had these incredible stories and these adventure and all the thing and the people that picked him up and all this stuff. And occasionally he did talk about people that knew who he was and they recognized him.
Yeah, and they're like, holy shit, I get to pick up John Waters.
Exactly. And there was like a band, there was some indie rock band that picked him up around a certain point. And then, but a lot of people didn't know who he was. And, people wouldn't, I don't think, especially if you're just seeing some guy on the side of the road. But he only had a briefcase, and I'm sure he had a cell phone, and that was it.
Yeah.
And so he had one moment where he talked about where he was on the road for several hours, like 8 or 9 hours, and nobody was picking him up. And he had a meltdown in the middle of the country and called his assistant and said, I'm done. You have to come, send help, send somebody to get me. I can't do it. And his assistant hung up on him. And when he made it back to San Francisco, he called his assistant and said, you still have a job. Like, he basically was like,
you did what
I told you to do.
Even though punk rock.
He admitted that there was a moment where he broke and was like, I can't do this. But he stayed in it and made it through and made it from, which is like, who else can do that? Who else can say that? There are people who at a certain point, they're like, you know what? I lived that life. I'm going to.
Yeah, and John Waters could have made that story funny. He could have sold a book that was like, I did a road trip and gave up halfway through. And he could have spun that and made that damn entertaining. So it's not like he wouldn't have still made the artistic goal. So it's cool.
Right. And he's all of his, and the thing too, in his films, he always includes people I think that he deeply respects for different reasons, like Patty Hearst. He's become really close friends with her.
Okay.
And Iggy Pop and all these people that he's put in his films that I think he sees as lifelong badasses.
Right,
too.
From totally different walks of life.
Yes, exactly.
So since you understand him really well, would you ever want to play him in a biopic if you got that option?
Oh my God, I would be terrified because I'd be so afraid about getting it right.
Yeah.
It would be such an honor. I do think that there's so much of Divine and like there's so many things that, as a performer, that I just can't not credit Divine.
Okay. As
an act, like it's just in me, because I just grew up watching that and being like, that's the definition of entertainment. I want to be that. And when anybody compares me to Divine, it's like the best compliment in the world. Yeah. I'm like, oh my God, that's I couldn't ask for a better. But John Waters has always said, I asked him that question, who would play him?
Oh, really?
Because he's always said Steve Buscemi should play him. and he said for 1 year for his Christmas card, he just had a picture of Steve Buscemi. And Steve Buscemi like loves it. And like they're friends. And he's like, But now he said this actor, Matthew Gray Gubler, who it's actually perfect, who really looks like a young John Waters. If you would look at him, you're like, that's actually who should play John Waters.
But if he came to you himself and said, hey, will you do this? You
100%.
would do it, right? Okay.
100%. And with complete respect and terror, I would totally do it. Yeah.
Respect and terror is great. How much of John Waters' magic do you think is contained in the pencil mustache? Like, I know it's kind of surface level, but it's also just so...
No, it's really
a combination
special.
Of dignified and ridiculous, which is
filthy. And it's filthy because it's so creepy because it's this drawn-on pencil right about... And it's also iconic. It's one of those things that, a true snowflake, somebody who is, a starburst. You know what I mean? There's that thing where you're like, oh... Nobody else figured that out. It's so simple. It's just like all great modern art when people say, I could do that, but you didn't. It's like anybody could just draw on a little pencil above their lip, but he has done that forever and always says that he, will always have that. It's like his signature. But it does say so much about him because it is very dignified and it is very restrained, yet it's also deeply disturbing.
Yeah.
In a beautiful way.
He always just sort of looks at you like, I'm kind of teasing you. Like I'm inviting you in on the joke, but you are the joke at the same time.
Absolutely.
There's something about
And when I've gotten to see him live, 4 or 5 times, I've seen his live solo shows, and it's a completely spiritual experience because he talks to the audience he's so intelligent, and he sees the world in such a way that like you're like, that's absolutely how. I mean, his opinions about everything. He's the only person whose opinions we disagree on some movies. He always releases his favorite movies of the year, and sometimes I'm like, no, I disagree on that. I didn't like that, or I loved that and you didn't, or whatever. But other than that, like his opinions on like just the world and people, he understands people so well that like he said something about like dressing up in like garish clothes and like knocking on politicians' houses and just showing up in their doorstep with like fashion don'ts, like just that's how you're gonna really offend them. Like he just has such an ability to like shock and scandalize with heart. I mean, there's no like real malice in anything that he's saying.
There's nothing that's to me like winking and I'm doing this to be seen. That it is entirely about the honesty of that interaction.
Absolutely.
Of like, hey, if I knock on a politician's door and I'm wearing this weird costume and I got my pencil mustache and I'm just in their face and they need to answer me,
right?
I'm going to get some honesty out of that interaction. And there's no vibe of like, but it only matters if people are watching.
He's never been that. I mean, if anything, he makes complete mockery of that perspective. If only if people are watching.
Yeah.
And that's so much what's in Serial Mom as well, and a lot of, and in Polyester as well, that just the cameras are so important. There's so much in Polyester about like what's captured on the news and how people do things for the camera versus who they really are.
Yeah.
And he has zero respect for people who are false in that way.
Yeah. I wanted to ask you about a thing I read on Wikipedia, which, by the way, his Wikipedia page, almost everything says citation needed. And
really?
It is almost all like pretty basic facts, almost to the point where I thought like, did somebody do this as a joke? Because it feels very like a fun John Waters joke to say, citation needed for everything. But there's a quote there that says he takes an equal amount of joy and influence from highbrow art films and sleazy exploitation films. Citation needed.
That's true.
I was curious how much you feel that about your own work too, about wanting to take from the really high and the really low and kind of middle brow is exactly where one should be.
Right. Yeah. No, that's so interesting. I'm that nerd who, for the last 4 or 5 years, has seen like every film nominated for Indie Spirit Awards, which is hard to do. Like it's a part-time job.
And those are some depressing movies.
Depressing movies, and a lot that you're like, oh my God. And then you have to find them. You have to dig for these movies and really go through, and really, scour the trades every week, or the papers every day for where they're screening. So I see a lot of really like small budget or like high art indie films. Like I really am interested in that. And yet I usually am in, for me performing, I'm putting on wigs in the basement of a Mexican restaurant. So yeah, I definitely see, I'll be in the basement at Casita del Campo talking about some bizarre movie. And I'm like, I don't know who else can even relate to this movie that I'm talking about because I had to dig to find it. So yeah, but he always like his top movies of the year, he'll mention some foreign film that no one's ever heard of, that's maybe like a very quiet, beautiful, simple film that is not his aesthetic at all, but also like his favorite films. I know last year like Cinderella was one of his favorite films, the live action Cinderella.
That didn't go over well, did it?
Cinderella? No, I don't think so. But he will always find, he has a lot of, his taste is very wide. It's usually not connected directly to anything you would think John Waters would love.
Right.
Which is always so interesting too. But you hear him talk about films and books and art. He knows art and literature like nobody's business.
So is that one of the reasons that you search out the indie films, because you learn to be voracious as a consumer of art?
Maybe. I don't know. I think I'm just a nerd about that kind of stuff, and I'm always like interested in stuff that I don't know about, and I always want to know like what's going on, and a lot of it I can't even really talk that intelligently about, but I want to be a part of it, and at least in the viewing of it, whether I can. And I think too, like most of what I do in terms of comedy and sketch and all that kind of, and parody and all that kind of stuff that I do, That's the last thing that I'm interested in seeing when I go to the movies.
Okay.
Because I usually, unless it's brilliant, like unless it's like John Waters, I don't really want to see something that I put my critical hat on too quickly. Like I'm thinking and I'm going, oh, they should have done this and they should have done that. Whereas like if I can see some really like small, beautiful, heartbreaking, tragic drama that is like that's so out of my world of what I would ever make or want to be in.
Yeah.
I'm way more interested in that.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
I wanted to also ask you, I recently did an episode of this podcast about Dolly Parton.
Oh, wow.
And it was a cool opportunity to ask some questions of my guest about Dollywood, about her theme park.
Yes.
So that got me thinking, if John Waters had a theme park, what do you think that would be like?
Oh, my God. Well, the name of his production company forever from the earliest stages was Dreamland.
Okay.
So I would imagine it would be called Dreamland, and there's so many incredible rides. I mean, just like, a puke shoot, and, I can't imagine what, would happen,
A little hitchhiking ride where
yes.
you just have to like stick your thumb out to get onto the next cart.
Yes. And I think one would just be like you have to walk through like a city in Baltimore. I mean like a street you have to walk through like a street in Baltimore and just deal with the locals, who are just not plussed by anything you bring.
I would love to go just walk through Baltimore in John Waters land.
Exactly.
Hey guys, it's Sarah Meyer, co-producer of this show, and I've come out to the beautiful Santa Monica Pier to find out what your average tourist thinks about John Waters. Have you ever heard of John Waters?
Name sounds familiar, but other than that, I've never heard of him.
No, I haven't.
Have you heard of John Waters?
I think I have, yeah.
Who is it?
Is it the director? Yeah. He done Hairspray.
That's right.
Yeah.
Are you impressed that he knew that?
I am quite impressed that you knew that.
I'm a gay man. I've got to know that, ain't I?
Do you have a favorite song from Hairspray?
You Can't Stop the Beat, of course.
Sing it.
Sorry, hon, that's not going to happen.
John Waters has a pencil mustache. Would you ever try to pull off a pencil mustache?
No. It's too much of a 30s thing. It's like an Errol Flynn type thing. Yeah. I've had my mustache for years. I could probably would even born with it. I don't know.
Do you think you could pull off a pencil mustache?
I think I'll give it a good go. Yeah, I think I could do that. Why not?
Would you hitchhike across the U.S. at age 70?
No.
No. Why not?
It's scary out there.
Scary?
Yeah.
What are you scared of?
No, I'm not scared, but it's just scary out there. I wouldn't want to be out there at night.
Well, it sounds like you're scared of something.
I'm not scared of nothing.
And you could do it.
I don't want to.
I'm not trying to convince you. It's up to you. When you're 70, can you see yourself hitchhiking across the country?
Yes, definitely. Me and my husband.
Is that your husband?
Yes.
Should we ask him?
Yes.
He's studiously ignoring us.
Babe.
Ask him about the hitchhiking thing.
John Waters, he's up in age. He decided to hitchhike across the U.S. Is that something that you think we'd like to do when we're 70?
Not ever in life.
Did that surprise you, that answer?
It did, actually.
We got married yesterday.
Are you serious?
Well,
First day.
Yep, we met 3 months ago.
You guys got married yesterday.
Yeah.
So you are still learning about each other.
Yeah, I would definitely hitchhike. I don't know about 70 though. God, no, I'll be at home by then, sat in my bed, I think, probably.
How about you?
I'd like to think that if I'm fit enough to still fight people off if I get into an awkward situation, like hitchhiking, I mean, you're putting your safety into other people's hands, so if I feel fit enough, then yeah, but equally, we could be the psychos, and they stop for us. They take that risk as well.
Yeah, true, that's very true.
Would you pick John Waters up if you recognized him?
If he was going to cast me in Hairspray, yeah. I get in the film.
So if you want to be cast in Hairspray, that means you can sing.
I'm not going to sing anything to you from Hairspray.
Can you convince him, please?
Well, I've heard his singing, so I'm not sure if he really wants that.
You bitch.
We're going to move on to our How Obsessed Are You questions.
Okay.
So these are questions I ask every guest. Some of them are kind of weird.
Okay, great.
Do you think about John Waters every day?
Great question. No, I would say at least once a week, though. He just comes up because everything I reference, like there was somebody posted a picture of Kellyanne Conway, and I was like, there's the face of a retarded brat. and somebody started laughing, and I was like, oh, that's a line from Female Trouble. Like, I'm always like, everything is, I see it through that lens.
Right.
So it comes up in that way.
Okay, so even if you're not consciously thinking about John Waters, like you're not
It's
setting
there.
aside, like, I'm going to have some tea and think about John Waters.
No, I don't
but
really, it's never a conscious thing, but
Okay.
it's just my points of reference are usually in that world.
Yeah. Have you ever had a dream about John Waters?
Not that I know of. No.
Do you have dreams that you remember in general?
Lately, yeah, I've been having lots of dreams where I'm having to like hang out with Donald Trump, which I think we all are. I think we're all sort of dreaming about that, which is just bizarre. And it's usually just like he's like representing like some like horrible family member or something. You know what I mean? And I'm just like living in fear of like hanging out with that person.
Yeah. Trump is interesting to think about in the context of John Waters, because obviously I can't imagine he supports his horrific views, but he is a mashup of the trashy with the real.
Yes. I mean, the one thing John Waters, what he said about like after the, you know, when people were freaking out right after the election, you know, he did say, he had a really, I thought, a very reasonable approach of being like, look, we've lived through Nixon. We lived through Reagan. He said, at least Donald Trump has met a gay person. He was like, you know, and he was like, if you're going to leave the country about this, fine, go. Like, leave. Nobody cares. He basically was like, we don't care if you want to leave this country over that. So he definitely had a very, like, I thought, it actually made me feel a lot better right after that, because I was like, okay, he's like, we got this. It's time for art. It's time for chaos. It's time for resistance. It's time for, this is what we've been through before. And I think as a true like punk icon that he is, he's like, this is the time that we all need to be like, you know, so he's not supporting Donald Trump by any means, but he's certainly not like, let's run away and hide, or let's live in misery and say we're doomed. And, you know, he's like, no, this is the time that we need to be making really interesting stuff.
Right. All the more reason to go hitchhiking and
Absolutely.
not let you make your assistant
Absolutely.
make you not quit. Cool.
Yeah.
Has John Waters ever made you cry?
That's a great question. I don't think so. No, I can't say that he has.
Do you think that is a reaction that he wants from any of his film or work, or is he so focused on, even if there's a big idea, the end result should be laughter?
I think if I had to answer that for him, I think he would. It's like it's his own truth. Okay. It's like at the end of the day, it's like justice and truth are really important to him. So and he's naturally very funny, and I think he uses comedy as a way to, like, as a social corrective. Yeah. You know, and saying this is what's wrong with people. We can laugh about it. And occasionally there are times that he will step outside of that and just make a flat out joke. Okay. I think he would be fascinated if someone, and I'm sure he's had a fan come up and say, oh my God, you know, when Lulu goes to get an abortion and polyester, it made me cry. I mean, I'm sure he'd be interested in that, hearing that perspective, but no, that hasn't ever made me cry.
So when people walk into your home, can they tell that you're obsessed with John Waters?
Oh, that's a great question as well. I don't think so. Although my apartment building I did pick is something that I think it's bright pink with sparkling turquoise letters in front. It's a 60s like dingbat apartment where there's like the 2-story. So it definitely looks like the opening credits of a John Waters film as when you look at my building, for sure.
Did you really, I understand you would see that and go, that's within my aesthetic because I like John Waters,
100%.
But did you decide like I'm going to live here because
not consciously, but I know that like everything that shapes when I love something that's like so tacky, it's beautiful. I know where I got it from.
Speaking of tacky but beautiful, would you write a poem about John Waters?
You know what? As a general rule, I hate poetry. So, you know, but if I had to, I would. I think I would write a really shitty, childish nursery rhyme for him, you know, that would appeal to the brattiest, most awful characters that he's ever played. I would do that more than I would write like an earnest, you know, honest poem to him.
You might write a limerick.
Right. Or just like because like the, you know, there's that character, you know, that Mink Stoll played in Female Trouble that she's always singing. She's always like doing nursery rhymes and jumping rope. Like Mabel on a table. Like it would be something like that. Like a 1950s disgusting rhyme about like a deeply bad person.
All right, so I'm going to take that as a yes, ultimately.
Oh, yes, I would.
You hitchhiked from a no to a yes on that one. If you owned a professional sports team, would you name it after John Waters?
Oh, my God. I mean, why not? First of all, how would I own a professional sports team?
This is actually
if I got like handed a sports team, it would be the funniest thing in the world. I would have no idea what to do with it. So I may as well call it the Francine Fishpaws or the Donald Dashers.
Yeah.
Why not?
Is Drew Droege your real name, or did you change to alliteration for John Waters?
No, that's my real name from day one. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Well, thank you about the sports team, because this is the first time I've asked that question, and I'm glad that your mind actually went to, okay, well, first, how would I get a professional sports team?
Happen? It would have to be handed to me.
Yeah.
Even if somebody offered me like, hey, would you like the Chicago Bulls? It's like $10. I think I'd be like, no, I'm good. I would ruin it. I'd ruin like a major institution for millions of people. I would drive it into the ground pretty hard. I don't even want it.
But if somebody gave you the Chicago Bulls, what would you call them?
Oh my God, what would I call them? First of all, I would look at all of them and be like, I'm so sorry. I am so sorry. Thank you for your service. Play ball. Do they say that?
I think so.
Okay.
Sure. That's nice and all purpose.
Okay.
Now I'm going to rename you after John Waters. If you heard someone say an incorrect fact about John Waters, would you correct them?
Always. I mean, I've done it many times.
Really?
Yeah, because people, they'll say certain things. And I actually, a couple years ago, I was asked to do a reading of a play that somebody was trying to do about divine. And, it was like, I sight unseen, because they asked me to read a couple characters in it. And I was like, yes, I'm on board. Of course I want to do it. And I was so offended by the play because it had so many incorrect facts.
Okay.
And it was basically arguing that John Waters was this like villain that was turning that because Divine's real name was Glenn Milstead, and so there were two different characters. It was Glenn and Divine.
Okay.
And Glenn was this very nice, unassuming, lovely guy, and Divine was this monster. Which neither were true. They both were the same incredible, lovely person.
Yeah.
And if you watch Jeffrey Schwartz's amazing documentary called I Am Divine, you fall in love with Divine, and everybody that ever knew him was like, he was the greatest person ever. So it basically, this play, which never happened, it never got off, and I think John Waters actually found out about it, and there was a cease and desist involved in it. Basically was like that he turned this like really nice guy into this like crazy monster.
Okay.
And aside from the horrible like sort of the damning of his character, there were so many things that were incorrect just about like dates that things happened. And I was like, did you do any research? Did you read a book before you launched into this crazy? Also, like, I think about that. I'm like, who would want to go see that play? Like, who was like, of all the trouble in the world, of all the villains in the world,
who needs to be taken down?
Who I want to hear about? I want to hear about how like that horrible, like these people did nothing but entertain people. That all they've done all their lives is make really cool shit.
Yeah, that inspires people.
Yeah.
Did you make it through the reading without correcting?
Well, we had like one rehearsal, and I was so upset that I had to go through. And of course, I was like, I'm gonna do it, but I did throughout in the first rehearsal. I mean, the only rehearsal we had, because it was just a reading.
Yeah.
I was like, well, that's not true, and I think I had like Mink Stoll's real name wrong. There were like things that are like so easily checkable that they just got wrong.
Is it specific to John Waters that you're willing to correct people, or do you correct people anytime it's something that means something to you?
I've tried to get better about that, because there are many times that I'm like, you know what? You don't need to walk around the world. I'm that know-it-all. Like I fight that demon inside a lot, because there's many times that I'm like, you know what? I don't need to tell people that they're wrong a lot of the time.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's worth it, and sometimes it's not. Because there's, I mean, I've seen it in like some friends or people that I've known who sometimes I'm like, they will go to such an extreme that like they'll be such an asshole. They're like, I'll rather be right than kind or human in this moment. Like, I'm going to make you feel like an idiot because you get something wrong. I don't find that to be a very attractive quality. I'm not proud of the fact that I'm a know-it-all about anything. Like, I don't think that that's a great quality to have, because who cares at the end of the day? I mean, unless you're spreading I mean, the problem with like a play, like I was talking about, is like it's libel. I mean, it's like just incorrect, and it's damning someone's character. In that case, yes, like, and it's something that I'm so obsessed with. I do want people to know all the right answers, but in general, when somebody just says the wrong thing, I try not to.
Yeah, I mean, that's understandable. There is a big difference between like, oh, you got the class of that starship from Star Trek wrong versus John Waters, I think, can be misunderstood in big picture ways through an accumulation of little incorrect facts.
Yes, big picture stuff I will definitely, because they'll see like I'm trying to think of like who are like some like modern filmmakers, and people will say that's like a John Waters movie, and it's like, no, like Farrelly Brothers, who I love Farrelly Brothers, they're great,
right? But they're just kind of standard gross out humor.
It's different, and I think there's room for it. But when people compare that to John Waters, I'm like, no, and I'll go deep with that, and then people are like very upset that they casually threw out that reference.
And you're totally like, just hold my beer. I'm going in.
Exactly. But yeah, in general, there are times that, when people, because I'll say something and I don't like when people jump down my throat immediately. I'm like, that's not correct because blah, blah, blah. It's like, okay, you win. I roll over real fast on that. I'm like, fine.
Would you ever get a John Waters tattoo?
I don't have any tattoos.
Okay.
And so, I don't think so. No.
Yeah.
I would just say no.
What is your...
I love tattoos on other people, but I can't ever think of one that I would ever put on me. So like it's
Is it the permanency? Like you don't...
Yeah, there's a permanency. Even though like it's something that like I know I will die loving John Waters. It's not like I would be like, oh, one day I'm going to wake up and go, I'm not as much of a... I couldn't do... That's just not how I've never been a bumper sticker person.
Okay.
If that makes sense.
So it sounds like you want to express your love internally, like you want to take it in and then let it come out through the other things you do instead of putting it on your car or your body.
Right. I think the people that have like stuff on their body, it's a little bit of a like, this sounds so awful, but sometimes it's like a placeholder for personality that some people have. They're like, look all the crazy things that I like that I have on me, that I'm always a little bit like, well, I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you're coming at it from almost a show don't tell perspective.
Yeah, sure. That's
cool.
Good. I'll take that. Yeah.
Would you, this is just a side question because I'm thinking about it, would you ever try having the pencil mustache?
No.
Because that feels like just trying to be him?
I would feel like I was like stealing from him. I would be like, oh God, why are you doing that? Although I have done it, I did do it in a character one time that
really?
I did on stage. Yeah.
Was it gratifying?
It was really fun because people identified it and they're like, is that like the John Waters thing? And I was like, so I did. I would say not in real life, but I did. Yeah. I would not want to do the pencil mustache in life because I wouldn't want to ever like copy him. But it was an homage to him because it was at a UCB show that we did. Was this crazy musical that we ended up turning into a little movie called Freak Dance, and it was like all like a breakdancing thing, and I played the bad guy. And I was in an all silver suit. My name was Dazzle. And when we did it on stage, I did a little pencil mustache. That was really fun to just sort of be like this, because it felt like a character that could be in one of his movies.
Have you ever given any thought to like, hey, if I was going to have an iconic something like the mustache, what would it be? Have you ever thought like, oh, maybe I should just be, I'll be the guy who always has a mohawk no matter what?
No, I mean, I've always had crazy hair that I've always kind of tried to keep long and insane, but no, I don't. I've never had that. Like, I've never had that like desire. I've thought about it. Yeah. I've definitely thought that. I'm like, what would mine be? I've definitely thought that question before. I've thought that through before, but I just don't know that I would have anything external.
Yeah,
cool. That would be it. No,
that makes sense. If a feral bear was blocking you from getting into a John Waters movie, would you try to go around the bear?
No. I would run the other way. A feral bear.
Bear.
As opposed to a domesticated bear.
Well, people keep bargaining with this question, so yeah.
It's like Melanie Griffith. What did Melanie Griffith's family have? Were those tigers? Lions?
I think so, yeah.
It was lions, I think. Like that Tippi Hedren and that have you seen that movie? Roar?
No.
It's a documentary. It's called Roar. And it's Tippi Hedren and Melanie Griffith, that whole family. They had lions that they kept, and crew members, people maimed, people like killed. Like, it was a horrible situation. They had wild animals, I highly recommend it. It will definitely make you not want to fuck with feral anything.
Okay, so you learned your lesson from Roar. You can just wait for it on DVD streaming.
I'll wait for it.
Yeah.
I love you, John, but I'm not going to fight a bear to see anything.
Fair enough. This is the last How Obsessed Are You question. It's a weird one that I ask everyone. If you couldn't watch a John Waters movie without you or someone you love first being punched in the crotch, would you still watch John Waters movies?
I would. I would take it. I would take the hit in the nuts. I mean, I wouldn't want to wish it on anybody, someone I loved.
Yeah.
But it would be worth it. Because by the end, I'd forget the punch and remember the movie.
Yeah. So even if it's something you'd seen a million times?
Yeah. If I was going to be sharing it with someone that I loved, who hadn't seen it.
Yeah.
Because that's my favorite thing, is to show these movies to people. Because their first reaction is always like one of just complete shock.
Okay.
They're usually not dying laughing at first. They're usually a little bit like, what is going on? Who are these people? Or are these people real? Are they actors? Or because they're really, I mean, it's a level of the performances, the acting is so arch and bizarre. You wonder if, like, I think Roger Ebert was quoted when like Pink Flamingos came out. He thought it was like a documentary. He thought they were just real people.
Okay.
And he's like, who are these people? Do they have real jobs? Are they like, where they live? Like, he was so offended by it. And while he will always go down as a less than stellar film critic in my mind, because he never understood John Waters. He never got camp at all.
No.
And it's why people are like, you want to lionize Roger Ebert. I'm like, he was fine. He was a B- to me in terms of like really understanding, because he hated John Waters movies, and so it's not my film critic.
Yeah. So that's cool that you feel like when thinking about the dumb crotch punching question, what comes to mind for you is seeing the movie again through somebody else's eyes.
Yes.
So like that's a big part of the viewing experience for you.
Because I remember the times that I've been able to show his movies to people for the first time, and how like influential they were.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess especially the freshman year in college moment, because it was like we were all just getting to know each other and getting to know ourselves. We're 18, and it's that really like defining period.
Yeah.
And I think it really showed my friends more than I was even aware of who I was.
Yeah.
By showing them that movie. Do you know what I mean? It's like how other people are like, oh my God, you have to watch Pulp Fiction or The Usual Suspects or whatever.
Yeah.
Those were the movies around that time that were like the ones that everybody else was watching. And I was like, we're going to find this 1974 drag queen murder comedy.
Yeah.
So,
and then you'll know me.
and they still, and that's still me, you know.
That's awesome. Yeah. I ask everyone to make a noise to sum up their obsession. What noise do you make
oh my God.
when you think of John Waters?
Gator, no, Gator, no.
Which movie
is
that
noise.
from?
That's from Female Trouble.
Okay.
Yeah, that's when Aunt Ida is really offended that her son Gator wants to be heterosexual and work in the auto industry. She's really offended by his choices.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
I rate everyone's obsession.
Okay.
On a scale of 1 to 7.
Okay.
And for you, we'll say it's out of 7 pencil mustaches.
Uh-huh.
I think I'm going to give you a 5 out of 7.
Okay.
Because
that's fair enough.
I think...
Because I won't fight a bear?
Yeah, because you won't fight a bear. For fuck's sake, step up. I really love doing this podcast to learn about how obsession is different for different people.
Right.
And for a lot of people, it is a sort of physical thing where, like, what can I amass? Can I make this physically a part of my world? Can I buy toys? Can I assemble things? Can I do an activity? And for you, it is it's
very internal.
Just internal. It's just
which I've never thought of until this. So yeah, this has been so cool to even explore this. Because I don't even really talk that much about it because I feel like I'm so inside it.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? It's like it's hard to maybe some talk about sometimes because you're like, it's such a part of like your bones.
Yeah.
That you're like it becomes it's very self-reflexive. Yeah.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah, cool.
Do you have anything that you want to plug where people can find you on social media?
I already talked about the play. If you're in LA, come check out Die Mommy Die, which is running through April at the Celebration Theater. And check out my podcast on Feral Audio.
It's great.
Called Thank You. It's called Minor Revelations. And I'm on the Twitter and all that, and I always put when I'm going to be on TV and all those kind of things up there. So, yeah.
Cool.
Check it out.
Here's some quick plugs for the show before our final questions. You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram as @Joseph Scrimshaw. You can follow Obsessed Podcast on Twitter as @Obsessed Podcast for info on all my upcoming shows and stuff. You can check out my website at josephscrimshaw.com. And you can support Obsessed by backing us on Patreon for as little as $1 a month. You will get access to our monthly patron-only bonus episode. For full info on that, go to patreon.com/Joseph Scrimshaw. So here are some final questions. They don't have anything to do with your obsession, but they can if you want.
Great.
If a picture of you became the most viral meme ever created, what would you want to be doing in the picture?
Oh, eating a Reuben sandwich.
Is that a specific reference, or did that just come to you organically?
That's the very first thing I thought of. I love Reuben sandwiches, and I'd love to find that to be how that could be a famous meme.
Yeah. Yeah, I think somehow, some way,
yeah.
I'm sure it could be a meme.
Uh-huh.
Would you be willing to just put a picture of yourself up on the internet, just eating a Reuben sandwich and seeing if it just takes off?
Just that. Like
no text, no context.
No context whatsoever. Just me eating a Reuben and then just secretly hoping it becomes the most famous meme.
I think that might be the next step in social media because I spend a lot of time on Twitter and I think jokes are getting more and more like, well, you understand the context. Assuming that the world does get your sort of little inside joke. So I think that might be the next step where we just put up pictures of ourselves doing weird things and some people assume, oh, I guess I don't know the context of that. So
right.
I'll just
run with it. But isn't that also like so much of that is like in the sort of Japanese culture? They're just there's like this the forward thinking of just like this is bizarre, so it's next level. Like, you know, where you're sort of like looking at something and going, oh, that's so interesting and bizarre and like it's like beyond words. Like it's just and I mean, that's interesting that you would say that because we've gotten so much further from like words and jokes, like vines are like 6 seconds long. Like what's lazier than a vine? Oh, just a picture of yourself doing something weird that you have zero idea what you're saying behind it, and you let other people fill in the jokes.
Yeah, you discover why I'm eating the Reuben.
Yeah,
what does the Reuben mean?
Right.
Next question is: if you could make the whole world sing one song together, what song would you make them sing?
I think Love Hangover by Diana Ross, because I love it so much. And I could listen to the beat. When it kicks into the fast beat, I could listen to it nonstop. And if everybody was singing it, although what are the lyrics to that?
Yeah, I don't know. I have
no idea.
I don't think I know the song.
And I love it.
Can you?
Oh, yeah. It's that bum 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 bum. It's but don't call the doctor, she sings in the middle of it. But oh my God, I can't believe that's the first thing I came up with, and I can't even tell you the words.
But I actually really like that
say
answer.
About me? It's like the meme of me eating it. I'm just.
What's the
you
mystery?
figure it out. You figure out the words.
I like the idea, though, that the whole world would sing a kick,
don't call
like
the
a bass line, and then blah, 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 call the doc. Don't call.
Well, people. I mean, to be fair, Joseph, people talk too much, and if they just hummed and made music, it'd be a lot happier place.
That is a great segue to my final question, which is, what is happiness?
Oh my God. Yeah. What is happiness? I think it is being able to like be by yourself and have peace.
Okay.
You know, I mean, like on a big level, but like when I think of when I'm at my happiest, even when I'm with somebody, it's just that I'm in a place of just such like calm.
Right.
It's not always joy. It's not always like, you know, laughter, but it's definitely I think happiness like is more about calm and peace than it is about like bursts of extreme pleasure, because I think those need to be just bursts. Those need to be separated moments.
Yeah.
But overall happiness, I think, is when you can just be at like total peace.
So almost like a feeling of effortlessness, like you just don't have to put any.
Right.
If you're by yourself or with people.
Thoughtlessness, or you know, when you're with people that you're so comfortable with, or when you're by yourself and you're just in a place of like where your mind is gone.
Yeah.
I don't think a lot of people. I don't know. That's a terrible thing. I can't imagine what it's like inside anybody else's head. I just know that I'm constantly thinking, and I'm not happy about that because I overthink a lot of things.
Yeah.
And when I'm at my happiest is I'm not really thinking too much.
Yeah.
I don't have to.
I totally relate to that.
Yeah.
I would love to stop thinking.
Yeah. You know what I mean? It's like those moments where you're just like, I just want to just turn it off, and that's when I can be at the happiest.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for sitting here and thinking about things a lot with me.
Thank you. I've loved it. It's been great.
Awesome. That is our podcast.
Yay.
You've been listening to Obsessed. Joseph Scrimshaw and his guest shared some stories with the rest. Rate 5 stars if you're impressed.
Here's one of my favorite John Waters quotes. I'm glad I got an abortion.